we're going to construct the circumcenter of the following triangle. And the important thing to remember is that the circumcenter is the point of concurrency of the perpendicular bisectors. So what that means is that at any point in time, if you're having trouble constructing the perpendicular bisectors, you are more than welcome and in fact encouraged to go back to the videos that just teach how to construct perpendicular bisectors. This picture is going to be a little bit more complicated because instead of having one line segment, we actually have three, and those are the three sides of the triangle. So we need to construct the perpendicular bisector of all three sides of the triangle. So one thing I'm going to do to help out in the construction is I'm going to actually construct each perpendicular bisector in a different color so that I can keep track of which lines and arcs were created from which corners. So to create the first perpendicular bisector, let's just do the bottom side of the triangle first. It doesn't particularly matter which one you start with, but to construct the perpendicular bisector, you put the center of the compass, that's the pointy part, on one end point. And you draw an arc, and the arc needs to go more than halfway to the other corner, because step 2 is to flip your compass over and draw the same size arc from the other corner. And notice here, I am putting pressure on the pointy part, but not so much on the pencil or the pen aspect of it, so that it can spin freely. And these two arcs need to cross in what I call the football shape. And then the final step is to take your straight edge, in this case a ruler, and connect the top of the football with the bottom of the football in a straight line. Now please be careful using the pen and the compass. If you're doing that, please be careful not to poke yourself with the compass. So this point right here is a midpoint, which means the left and the right side are congruent, and it's 90 degrees. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to switch out the compass colors to a different color of pen. In your case, you're welcome to use colored pencils. You're welcome to do it in the same color all three times. Some people prefer to trace it in pencil, or do it in pencil and then trace it in color so they can keep track. But we're going to do the same thing from another side. So maybe from the top vertex to the bottom left. So the compass goes on one center, or one vertex, and again you have to go half the distance to the other vertex. But notice this arc is not the same size as before. It's a little bit smaller because the side of the triangle is smaller. So there's my blue arc, and flip your compass over, same thing from the other corner. And we have a blue football shape here that we're then going to connect using our straight edge. That goes through the midpoint, which means the two pieces are congruent. 2 tick marks instead of 1 though, because it's a different side of the triangle, and a 90-degree mark. Let me put some arrows here on the end of the red line, even though it's a little bit outside of your viewing area. And notice the red and the blue lines intersect. That's a good thing. They cross. They need to cross. And it's kind of a little debatable here as to whether we can stop. Where the lines cross, where the perpendicular bisectors cross, will be the circumcenter. And as we know, if two lines cross, they cross at exactly one point. There's no way for those lines to cross anywhere else. But the issue becomes, could we have made a mistake? So it's my opinion that in order to decrease the number of errors, we should go ahead and construct the third line and just make sure that the third one's going to cross where the first two cross. So let's do the third side. from here to here. Again, put the center on one of the two corners, and you have to go more than halfway. So here I am, more than halfway to the corner. This time I'm just using a straight pencil. Flip your compass around and go from the other corner. We have another football shape, which we can connect with our straight edge. Now, as you connect with your straight edge, make sure that you're getting the edges of the correct football. So like right, for example, here, it looks like I have the edge of the football, but if you look really carefully, it's the red arc with the pencil. Those are the wrong two arcs. We need this point right here where the pencil's arcs intersect. Make it a line, 90-degree mark because it's perpendicular, some congruency marks, and notice, almost perfectly right here, our pencil line crosses the red line, which crosses the blue line. And this point right here is the circumcenter. If your three lines do not cross at the exact same point, it means something happened. It could be anywhere. It could be that your compass slipped. It could be that you connected the wrong 2 points. There are lots of places in such a complicated picture to mess up, so you kind of have to go back and maybe just start again and see what happens. But be really careful. They should cross perfectly somewhere in your picture. We are going to be constructing the end center of the following triangle. And something to remember is that the end center is the point of concurrency created by the angle bisectors. So to construct the end center, what we're actually going to do is construct the 3 angle bisectors of the triangle. If at any point in time you're confused and you'd like extra help with constructing an angle bisector, you are welcome and encouraged to go back and find the video on just creating the angle bisectors. So we have 3 angles here, the bottom left, bottom right, and the top to create the angle bisectors for, and you're welcome to start with whichever one you want. I'm going to start at the bottom left. And something to keep in mind is that they are 3 separate angle bisectors that we're constructing. You don't have to use the same measurements for both, or for all 3. So first thing, put the center of your compass on one of the vertices and draw an arc. Be real careful. I actually ripped a hole in my paper that time. So there we go. And the points where they cross now become the center of the compass. You can change the size, make it bigger, make it smaller as you like, as long as it's over half the distance to the other side. So here we go. An arc going up from that side, an arc going up from the left side. There we go. Now, where these arcs cross should make some sort of a football shape, which we can then connect to the angle to make the angle bisector. An arrow on the end, and to label it bisector, we put congruency marks in the angles themselves. Now it's my advice that as you work these problems, if you have to do something 3 times, that you switch colors in the middle. You can use colored pencils, you can use colored pens. Your compass makes it fairly easy to switch. Some students prefer to use pencil because it's easier to erase, and then just trace the lines in highlighter so they can keep track of which one's which. But now we're going to do the same thing from another vertex. So here I've switched to red. I'm going to put the center of the compass on the vertex and draw an arc. And that arc crosses the two sides of the triangle, the bottom and the right side. And that's those points where they cross is where your compass now goes. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so it takes up a little less space. But as long as it's more than halfway to the other side, you're good. So put the center down here and draw an arc. Now flip your compass over to the other corner, at the other point where the arc crosses the side, and we're going to draw the arc again. And notice we now have a red football shape there, which we can connect to the corner of our triangle. Through the edges of the football. And because it's an angle bisector, that means these two arcs down here, those two angles, should be congruent. And we do it a third time. Third angle bisector. And for me, that means third color. I'm going to start with the center on the corner. Third corner, third vertex, and draw an arc. The 2 points where that arc crosses the side of the triangle, here and here, are where the centers will go next. So it's here more than halfway across. This looks pretty good. Put the center where they cross. Be real careful. You want to avoid having to do a bunch of extra lines, if at all possible. Flip it over to where the arc crosses the other side and draw another arc. And we have a third football shape. So 1, 2, 3 football shapes. And this third one, we can now connect out. From the vertex, through the 2 ends of the football, out the other side of the triangle with an arrow, and these angles, because it's an angle bisector, should also be marked congruent. Now, if at any point in time these pieces don't line up, maybe your line, to make it go through the 2 ends of the football, it does not go through the vertex. What that means is that one of your arcs maybe slipped, maybe your compass changed sizes, maybe, for example, down here there was a hole ripped in the paper. It's hard to know for sure, but all 3 of those points should line up perfectly. And when they do, notice our 3 angle bisectors, the pencil, the red one, and the blue one, all cross right there perfectly. That point is the incenter. If you draw all 3 angle bisectors and they don't cross at the same point, it means that at least one of your angle bisectors is wrong. And there's no way to find out except to go back and reconstruct some of your angle bisectors. Only 2 of them are actually needed to find the incenter, but the third one is a safety check to make sure that all 3 are in fact going to cross in the correct place. We will be constructing the centroid of the triangle, and something important to remember is that a centroid is the point of concurrency of the medians. Now, the trick with the median is that a median by itself is fairly complicated to construct. It is the line segment that connects the midpoint to a vertex. So what we actually need to find before constructing the medians are the midpoints, and then we can connect them to the vertex. A midpoint is created by a perpendicular bisector. So before we can create the midpoint, we need the perpendicular bisector. To create the perpendicular bisectors, take your compass, put the center on one vertex of your triangle. You need the distance, the radius of your compass, to be more than halfway to the other side, and you draw an arc. Now, using the same size for your compass, flip the corner, or the center, to the other vertex of the triangle, and draw the same size arc. And they should cross and make some sort of a football shape in the middle. And with that football shape, you connect the two intersections of the arcs. There is our perpendicular bisector, which means this point right here is our midpoint. Now the trick is that the median connects the midpoint to a vertex, and it's not the vertices to the left or right, it's the vertex across the triangle. So the median, although this line is the perpendicular bisector, the line we actually want connects the midpoint to the vertex. The median is this line here. Now what we need to do is the same thing a couple more times. So we start, and let's use a pencil this time. Switching colors can help you keep track of which construction you're working on. And we put the center of the compass on a new corner. Let's do this one over here. Now right now, notice the compass does not go more than halfway to the other corner. You're going to miss your football shape that way. So you got to make it a little bit bigger, so it goes more than halfway to the other vertex. And you draw your football shape. Now flip the center of your compass over. You're going to do the same thing from the other corner. Now the pencil creates a football, and be real careful to keep track of which intersections we're dealing with. The pencil crosses here, the pencil crosses down here. And we get another perpendicular bisector, which means we have another midpoint right here. Now again, the perpendicular bisector is not our end goal. Our end goal are the medians, which you get by connecting the midpoint to the vertex on the opposite side. Right there. Now notice they do cross. And that's going to be where the median hopefully ends up, but we got to make sure that that is where our third line is going to hit. It is possible to have two of them cross and look perfectly normal and still be incorrect. You still want the third median just to check. So switch to the third color, red this time, and we do the third side. Now again, here, this might be more than halfway, but it's awfully close. I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bit bigger, just to be sure. I'd rather be safe than sorry. So we draw our arc from the corner. Switch to the other vertex. So notice we're using both vertices twice, and when you use the red versus the blue from this corner, they don't have to be the same size as long as both red arcs are being used with the same size. Now the red football crosses, so we draw our perpendicular bisector. (90 degrees), congruent marks. Keep in mind, so our blue line, our red line, and our pencil do in fact cross. And that is an important point, but that's not the point we're looking for. Keep the end goal in mind And the end goal here is to create the medians so we get the centroid. And the median goes from the midpoint, this point right here, to the opposite vertex. So from here across to the opposite vertex. There's our third median. So we have the blue one here, the pencil here, the red one here, and if you ever have trouble, it's always okay, for example, to grab a highlighter. There's one. There's the second median. And the third median. And they should all cross at one point. And that one point where they do cross, which happens to be right here, is called the centroid. Your three medians should, when you have all three constructed, cross at exactly one point called the centroid. If your medians do not all intersect at the same point, well then that means at least one of your medians has a mistake in it somewhere. You can always go back. My suggestions would be to make sure that you are connecting the correct arcs and that your compass size did not change from football to football or within each of the three footballs. But drawing all three medians is a sure way to make sure that your centroid is exact. All three medians should intersect at one point, the centroid. Constructing an orthocenter. The thing to remember with orthocenters is that the orthocenter is the point where the three altitudes intersect. So we really need to construct the altitudes. Now the trick with the altitudes is that it's actually a perpendicular line through a vertex. So if you're having trouble constructing perpendicular lines through a point, please refer to how to construct a perpendicular line through a point on the individual construction. Because for this picture, we actually have a 3 that we have to worry about. So my first thought here is that when you have 3 sides of the triangle, it becomes a little complicated to see what's what. So what we're going to do is we're actually just going to focus on the bottom side of the triangle, down here, and the vertex that is not part of this side, which is up here. So pretend like you could completely ignore the left and the right side of the triangle. We have a line and a point. We need to construct the perpendicular line through this point. Now I'm going to use 3 different colors for the compasses to keep track of our 3 altitudes. But the first thing is to put the center of your compass on the point and to draw an arc that crosses the side twice. So it becomes a little interesting here. Like right about here, I'm touching the line, but I'm not necessarily crossing it. So I need to be a little bit bigger than that. But if I go all the way out here, it actually does work. I just crossed the vertex and a point over here as the 2 places where the lines cross. Now what you do is you put the center of your compass now on those 2 points. You draw arcs, and we're looking for the football shape in the middle. Again, you need to be more than halfway between the 2 points, but you don't have to be the full distance if you prefer. But an arc from one side, and then flip over to the other point and do an arc from that side. And finally, connect the football shape intersections. And if you've done it correctly, your line should go through both ends of the football and through the vertex of the triangle. So it goes through the vertex and both ends of the football. Now what we're going to do is the same thing 2 more times. And I'm not going to highlight all 3 sides because then it becomes a little complicated. I normally wouldn't highlight even the first one when I'm doing this for myself. But let's see here, let's focus maybe on this side next. So here's the vertex opposite. That's where the center of the compass goes. And you need a radius, a width, that's going to cross the side of the triangle. So for example, here we go. Now if you notice, this side over here does cross, right here. But the other side actually doesn't cross the triangle. So what we have to do, it's not a big deal, is just make the side of the triangle a little bit longer. So you use your straight edge, you get it lined up, and you want to be real careful to make sure that you're actually taking into consideration the width of the line, how you hold your pencil, to make sure that it actually continues straight, and it crosses out here. So that's okay. It's not a big deal. Just make the side of your triangle longer. Now when we put the center of our compass on those 2 points, we need to go more than halfway to the other point. And we draw a football shape. Start at this one. And then we flip over and we do from the other side also. And we get our blue football shape there. And where that crosses, where those 2 ends meet, should create a straight line with the vertex on the other side of the triangle. Now something to keep in mind here, notice it does cross. This is an altitude, which means we should be marking these at 90 degrees right there. I'll grab the red pen and mark this one down here. It's always a good idea to mark them as you go because there's always a chance at the end of forgetting marking them, which could cost you some points on a test or a quiz. So please mark them as you go, 90 degrees. Now we do the same thing 1 more time from the 3rd side and the 3rd vertex. So we had our compass center up here. We then had our compass center over here. 3rd one is this one over here. So center of your compass, and we need it to cross the opposite side at least twice. So here we go. Now notice this side again, it does cross right here, but on the other side of our triangle, the side's just not long enough. So make it longer. No big deal. Use your straight edge. Just be careful, make sure it lines up correctly. And make it longer until it crosses out here. So now we have a point where it crosses here, a point where it crosses here. That's where the center of your compass will go on the next 2 moves. Make sure that your compass size is over halfway to the other point. 1 arc, flip over. Now, this picture is getting fairly messy, fairly complicated, lots of arcs. It's one advantage of switching colors is that now that I'm using pencil, I only have to worry about where the pencil arcs cross. If you don't switch colors, that's okay. You have to be fairly confident if you're using ink to draw your arcs that your compass work is good, so you can't erase it. But be real careful to make sure that you are connecting the correct ones. So we connect the football ends, and it should go through the vertex, 90 degrees. Now right here, you'll see the red line, the blue line, and the pencil all intersect right here. That point right there is called the orthocenter. Again, drawing only 2 of the altitudes, constructing only 2 of the altitudes, can find the orthocenter for you, But the third altitude is going to be the way to check, to verify. All three altitudes should intersect at exactly one point. If they don't, it means one of your altitudes is wrong somehow. But please construct all three altitudes to guarantee that your orthocenter is correct.